Tour de France. We had the Queen Stage, the most climbing, the highest mountain pass, 3 massive climbs for the riders to tackle. Before that, we had an intermediate sprint first, which Little Trek kept it together and that was won by Milan. And then we saw a lot of riders trying for the breakaway. Noticeably, Wout van Aert and Tim Wellens very active for their respective GC leaders, both looking to get in there. We did end up seeing a break forming with a former podium at the Tour de France, Primoz Roglic, noticeably getting into it. We then saw Lenny Martinez, who was also in there, receive a very timely sticky bottle to come back to that breakaway and win the first KOM points. Then Visma Lisa Black on the second climb of the day lit up Col de la Madeleine with only Pogacar and Vingegaard able to make it across to this breakaway or the remnants of it, because this breakaway had been blown apart by the pace of simply trying to stay away from the GC group. We saw Lipowitz trying to follow these guys and getting stuck in no man's land for quite a while as Jorgensen ripped the descent for Vingegaard to try and create a gap on Pogacar before the final climb. This didn't work, and we saw the breakaway group make it to the bottom of the descent and then look like they essentially just stopped for coffee, because they completely stopped riding, no pace whatsoever, which meant that Ben O'Connor decided to go on the attack, and he was followed by Rubio and then Jorgensen. These 3 riders worked together until the base of the final climb. Lipowitz did catch the other riders while they were at the cafe and decided to get a head start on them before the final climb. And he came into the final climb with a 2-minute head start on the main GC guys. During this, Onley had been dropped and had a few teammates from DSM in Vandenbroek and Barguil to pace him back to the GC group, fortunately right at the start of the last climb. With the GC group essentially forfeiting the stage win, it looked like they weren't keen to chase back the break, which had 3.5 minutes at the bottom of the climb and held this most of the way up. Ben O'Connor decided to go solo from 14 kilometers to go and drop Ina Rubio after having already dropped Jorgensen. We then saw Lipowitz getting caught by the GC group and then pretty quickly dropped after that. And then Vingegaard and Pogacar fighting it out at the top of the climb, where Pogacar once again showed that he is just going better at the moment. So for the final results of the day, we had Ben O'Connor staying away quite comfortably in the end, 1 minute and 45 seconds to Tadej Pogacar, a further 9 seconds back to Jonas Vingegaard, and Oscar Onley, who I think we will both agree on, and anyone watching will be the winner of the Lazarus Award for today. He came back from the clouds to hold on to 4th place in the end and make a good run at that podium, which we'll get into later. Ina Rubio held on for 5th, and Felix Gol, who had also noticeably been in the breakaway for most of the day, in 6th. Primoz Roglic in 7th. Aidan Burgess, first question for you. Is the Tour de France GC battle completely over?
No. Oscar Onley. Who the fuck is Oscar Onley? Hey. Like, you see, I'm waiting the whole stage for this to spice up. You know, you see Visma really lighting it up in the descent down Madeleine. That's when I woke up and turned on the coverage, and I thought, all right, this is, my prediction yesterday was Vingegaard, and I thought, look, this is proper coming good. And then crickets. But when Vingegaard does finally put the hammer down, which I think we can talk about whether Vingegaard has actually had a hammer to put down this Tour de France or not. There was a lot of talk about him working on his explosiveness, and I don't know, but Onley held the whole time. And we talked about, someone had asked earlier whether Oscar Onley was going to be on the podium, and we both said no. And I don't know, Lipowitz showed some questionable tactics in trying to go for, I would say he was trying to go for the stage win today. And I think he maybe pushed that a bit further into the red than he probably should have. And Onley capitalized on that. But not only did he capitalize on it, he proper got over the top of him and showed himself to be an absolutely fantastic climber on the hardest climb of the tour so far, arguably. So yeah, I think it's 100% in play for that third place. What do you reckon?
Yeah, for the podium, as we discussed already earlier, a few stages ago, the podium is going to be where it is exciting from now on. I think it's quite clear, first and second, we hope there's no bad luck, nothing untoward, and it just looks like it's pretty clear who the first and the second best riders in the race are at the moment. But that third spot completely up for grabs. And yeah, the tactics, like I was trying to think about what it's easy in hindsight to look back and think, yeah, they should have played that really differently. And if you look back, they had Roglic and Lipowitz both there, both clearly on pretty good days, because at different times they looked like they were both the third best rider in the race. But if you look on the result sheet, which at the end of the day is what matters, they were both nowhere near Onley, who at multiple times they looked like they were far stronger than. And the big thing for me is at no point in that race you could have put them in different jerseys on different teams and they'd ride that exactly the same. At no point was there any cohesion between those two. So this is an instance where I think they would have benefited from simply choosing Lipowitz or Roglic even and just saying, this is our guy. We need the other rider to ride for them. They've been trying to play the double pronged attack and to keep both of them with some freedom. I don't know how much of that is coming from the riders or above because we're not within the camp, but that it didn't work today at all. They had two guys there, Roglic and Lipowitz, in that group, only well out the back, more than 2 minutes behind them at the bottom, not at the bottom of the final climb, but about 12K before the bottom of the final climb. And yeah, they had their main guy pushing all the wind in the valley by himself. Yes, to get a gap, but clearly paid for it at the end. And then Roglic saving, which arguably should be the other way around if you think about it, and very, once again, easy to say in hindsight, and there's no telling whether Roglic would have got the same gap if he had have done it. But yeah, just it didn't work, their tactics, and it hasn't cost them their third place on GC or the white jersey at this point, but it's not going to be the nicest thing for Lipowitz now to have what he has, which is a much smaller buffer than he had at the start of the day.
22 seconds now.
22 seconds it is. So tomorrow we've got another really hard mountain day. Onley didn't look amazing the whole day, but then on the final climb was able to follow a lot longer than the two Red Bull-Bora riders. So yeah, I can't give him a pass.
They've got to figure out those tactics, don't they? They had the opportunity, like you said, it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds gap between the group with Roglic and Lipowitz to Onley. And Lipowitz, well, everyone got caught napping when O'Connor attacked. Lipowitz then decides he's going to try and bridge across to that. Again, what I'm assuming was to try and get the stage win or to try and put the hammer or the nail in Onley's coffin. But that's the point that Roglic needs to go to. Neither of these guys are close enough to threaten GC. And they needed to work together on that and try and put, they had the opportunity to put Onley completely out of contention for this podium. And instead, Onley has clawed back time. And it is only because they've dropped the ball. They had every opportunity to really shore up that spot with 3 days to go now, 2 climbing days. They could have put significant time into Picnic Post NL today. And yeah, instead they've had the opposite. And the same goes for Visma. Their tactics coming in to that, through that valley was bizarre. They completely sat up. To see Jorgensen going and following Ben O'Connor's move, you could say, yeah, it was so he could be a satellite. But then they completely sat up and waited for Onley's group to come back, which featured just as many UAE riders as it featured Visma Lease Bike riders. We've jumped in and defended Visma Lease Bike's tactics up to this point. I found what they did today absolutely galling. Jorgensen seemed to be riding for a stage win until he wasn't. And then I thought maybe he's sitting up and waiting for Jonas. And I got quite excited and thought, well, here's the attack. Jonas is going to attack at the foot of the climb and he's going to bridge across to Jorgensen. They're going to go together. He just went out the arse end of their group straight away. And it just, I don't know. Today, I think it's indefensible from both Red Bull and Visma. I understand trying to throw everything at it from Visma, but they threw nothing at it today, really.
Well, they opened it up early, and I think that's what they had to do. If you look at the all the data points we have of Tadej Pogacar's bad days, which is really not many. One or two of those bad days is just the climbing being really hard before the final climb. So UAE seemed like they were pretty happy for that breakaway to get a lot more time. Visma Leasabite jumped on the front on Cooldown and went, we're going to make this really hard for Tadej Pogacar, make him work hard. Also, even with the Vingegaard attack, we saw it was more of a sustained effort because if you look at the Von 2 attacks, it was the really punchy stuff, throwing haymakers from behind him, trying to get that gap. But in a way, while it's more useful for getting the gap doing that suits Pogacar because he is the punchier rider. He has a really good sprint. He's able to just jump straight onto the wheel. He prefers that on-off a bit more than Vingegaard. If you look at the times Pogacar has cracked, it's been those long, sustained efforts where at some point he just blows. So they've gone, this is our best strategy, is to set a really hard pace from the bottom of Col de la Madeleine, have Vingegaard attack, but not in the way that it's a 20 seconds, then stop once he can't ride any harder. It was a 20 seconds, a little bit over threshold, and then sit at threshold and essentially try and crack him or ride him off the wheel. This didn't work because Pogacar was clearly going quite well, as we say over and over again. Gets to Jorgensen. Jorgensen at this point already just didn't look like he really had the legs to rip it because the entire rest of the breakaway was still on there at that point. So Jorgensen, I think, might have dropped. Arensman was the only one I think that got dropped between those two riders catching and going to the top. So the last 4Ks of Col de la Madeleine. So again, I sort of highlighted it before, but the tactics become really hard when you don't have the legs to back them up. And then looked like they've got to the bottom of the valley before the final climb, and there was two options: stop, let it reset, come back together, which is one. It's not quite what they did, I guess, and then the other one is Jorgensen to just rip it on that valley road and let those two go head to head on the final climb, which would have been awesome to see the last 27k with just these two guys duking it out. But then you lose the advantage of having Jorgensen there at all because he's cooked after riding 15k in the valley, and then those two are just there on their own. The thing is, what ended up happening is Jorgensen was cooked anyway because he went out there, and I'm sure that wouldn't have been the plan for him to be as buckled as he was, but I don't know whether he's going to get told from the team to follow that move, or once he's there to stay with that move if he doesn't sit up. And it's a tricky one because should he say at that point straight away, nah, I don't have the legs, I'm going to go back because I can do more from there? Tough one to say. Or it might just be Jonas, even at that point, saying, I can't drop this guy, just have a go and go for it yourself. And we don't know. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Jonas said. But yeah, again, easy in hindsight, but you look back and their tactics just did not work. And at no point did Pogacar look under any pressure, because then what ended up happening was his teammates came back. He had his buddies there sitting on the front for him. So much confidence from those guys there, and then just did what he does best at the top of the climb.
It's just another situation where I feel like Visma, they are consistently, it feels like anyway, just ceding the initiative. So today, again, there was an opportunity for these guys to get away. Harry in the comments, we're discussing cycling, buddy. So yeah, Tadej, Jonas and Tadej in the foot. Yeah, they've got Jorgensen. It's a 2-on-1. The only time that I think they're going to get Tadej Pogacar on the back foot is without his teammates. He looked questionable on the descent down Col de la Madeleine. He was leaving a gap. He didn't seem to have as much confidence following Vingegaard as Jorgensen and Vingegaard seemed to have in that descent. it's the only time that I've seen Tadej sort of sitting off a little bit. And I don't know, I would have liked to see what happened because, by letting those 2 UAE riders come back, I think it was 3 UAE riders, but it was
Soler
Yates
also made
and,
it back.
yeah,
Naves
to
as
see
well.
them. And then Naves and Yates are the ones leading out. And then Vingegaard's got to attack off a lead out ride on a time when the spectators are really, I don't know, it just, it's frustrating because like you said, maybe they just don't have it. And
it looked looked like that. They'd be a little bit annoyed looking back on how they used their riders, I guess, in that they could have used Jorgensen better in that situation. They could have possibly used their other domestiques, Yates, Kuss, a little bit better. But would it have made any difference? No. It just looks like Pogacar is going better, even if you have those two completely isolated and Kuss, for example, pacing the whole of the lows as hard as he possibly can. Pogacar just is still going to be there fine. So, it wasn't a great tactical display. They threw a lot of they threw a lot of shit at the wall, and none of it stuck today. But it didn't, I don't think, make any difference to the end result. Even if they had have played things a little bit better, it's still not going to look amazing when you've just up against the best guy in the race.
Yeah, totally. So Caitlin, I think they kind of answer your questions anyway. I don't think Red Bull-Bora Hansgrohe was cooked here. I think it was just, you've got two people that, I don't think they've settled their leadership issues there. And, Roglic has come into this, the team leader, and Lipowitz has proved to be on better form. And I think there's just some friction in there that maybe we're not seeing. So I think we need to address the elephant in the room, though, which is Ben O'Connor.
I was just
talk about
just looking at it on the screen, and we also need to talk about how good it is for that team. So one of the questions I actually had come through today from Matt Parkinson, he asked about Dylan Groenewegen and said, would the team be happy with him? Haven't seen him in any sprints. Had to check that he was still in the race. And we haven't mentioned him, but he has just been completely absent from the race. They've come with a split team, half targeting sprints with him, half targeting GC was the plan with O'Connor. That's a massive blow for the team when in the first week of the tour he's already off GC, but a stage win for this team is huge. And we talked about it at one point earlier in the tour. It makes a season for a team to win a stage of the Tour de France, especially a big stage like this, almost a savior in that the GC battle kind of fizzled out on the final climb because the camera was actually on O'Connor for a lot of the time, and he is the big story of the day.
Yeah, and huge for a team like Jayco that has also been through quite a bit of upheaval. I was having a brief chat to Matt White, and obviously he's been dropped off as head of performance, I think was his role.
Yeah, head sports director. So he's also in the car for a lot of races, but head of performance as well. So he's running the whole performance side rather than the management side, which is run by Brent Copeland. And from what I could gather, those guys were having a few fallings out, as you'd expect any management and sports side in any team when the team's not performing, which they haven't been performing to the level they'd hope. There's going to be some tension within the management, and essentially it seemed like it got to the point where one of them had to go, and that was Matt White, which is a bit of a shock to the whole cycling world because he's been there since the start of that team and been so valuable for that team. But then another thing with this is I don't think a lot of people realize how close this team, Australia's team, Jayco Lula, is only one guy deciding that he doesn't want to sponsor a cycling team anymore to folding at any point. So Jerry Ryan has been the backer since the start. His companies have always been behind it. Any moment, if he just goes, actually, I'm not really that into this anymore, I'm not getting that much out of it, the team's not going as well as I want, then the team's done. So for him, he comes to the tour each year, especially. I really hope he's there for the team's sake at the moment. But same thing, the pressure would have been building a lot throughout this tour. They haven't succeeded. Yeah, they had a 5th place on a stage with Plappy. Their GC hopes through the 4, not looking like it in sprints. And 2nd place with Mauro Schmidt as well. But the pressure builds. They came here for a GC placing and 1 or 2 stages. The minimum for them would be getting a stage win, which they've done now. And honestly, that probably does a great deal towards saving the team and making sure it continues for at least another few years.
I think you would take this stage win today over a top 10 if what you're going for is things like TV time. If you're going for UCI points, then maybe the equation is different. But this is the Queen stage of the Tour de France. This is the stage that everyone is watching. I mean, as we talked about, it sucks that it falls on a Thursday night or a Thursday day in France. But this is the big one, and that will be played on so much. The romance of it, the mist, and it was hailing coming into that finale. That will be on everyone's social media feed.
From all the sponsors as well, that's MAP, their kit sponsor. That photo of Ben O'Connor crossing the line with his fists in the air, that's going to be plastered by next week. They'll have that plastered on the front of their shop in Melbourne. All the giant stores are going to have a massive photo of him crossing the line there. Yeah, the Jayco caravans are going to have Ben O'Connor plastered on the back of them. I don't know if that's going to, I don't know how many Ben O'Connors we'll see driving around the outback in Australia, but all of those sponsors, that is just massive for them. The Tour de France is the biggest stage. And yeah, I think it does a lot more. It's hard for them to plaster an 8th place on GC on all of their branding for the rest of the year, whereas a Tour de France stage win is absolutely huge.
And it's not a stage win at a sprint. It's one thing to put Dylan Groenewegen crossing the line by himself, but Ben O'Connor on a climb in the mountains, solo, having time to sit up and do a proper celebration over the line is just, you can't, you can buy that publicity. They have, but it's priceless, really.
Caitlin's just saved us here as well, because the fact that Rodriguez pulled out of the tour this morning after breaking his pelvis, so we hope he recovers. Ooh. And Jordan Jagat lost quite a lot of time. So Ben O'Connor is in the top 10 now anyway. So
wow.
Yeah, whether everything. So he's in 10th place now currently with a 3.5 minute buffer on Jordan Jagat, and with that confidence, you can hold on to that. So he's going to get both by the looks of it anyway. And even if we were still to put it in context, I think if things had gone right for him in that first week, and he'd had a smooth run, then maybe he finishes 6th or 7th anyway without the opportunity to go for a stage win from that kind of break. Whereas the fact that, it's been one of the highlights of this tour, I think, to see these riders in the top 10 that aren't a real chance of going for the podium. They're going for these breakaways rather than just desperately trying to hold on to their top 10. They're prepared to throw it all out there and go up the road and go for the stage win. And then they have the opportunity to get both, like we see Ben O'Connor's done, Ben Healy's done already, and they're in 9th and 10th place after winning a stage as well.
And also, Ben O'Connor is someone I'm a Ben O'Connor skeptic. I've had my doubts about him when he was at the Vuelta and he was in red. I was skeptical about the way that he rode that. Sometimes he doesn't always come across as the most positive cyclist. And I think anything like this where he demonstrates his dominance has to be good for him as a rider. He's someone that's demonstrated a lot of potential, but I think at the moment it's still unrealized. And I hope Ben O'Connor walks away from this and takes that. There were points where Visma was riding full gas on the front to try and drop people. Yates has his jersey undropped and his hairy chest out. That's when he's going full sicko mode, and they couldn't take any time on O'Connor. He was absolutely on a flyer today. So
and I think this is an example of shocking first week. Well, not terrible. He survived it and he got through it, but a few crashes, losing time in crosswinds, and we've seen him before in the Netflix documentary. They painted a pretty rough picture of him in the first year, I think. But just when things don't go his way, he seems to lose his head a bit. And this is something that, I was racing against him in Australia, and back then he had a name for doing this, but he's certainly not the only one in the Tour de France peloton that has, thrown the toys out of the pram when things aren't going his way.
Spit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the massively positive thing is just getting through that first week, keeping his head screwed on, getting into the terrain that really does suit him, and still sticking it out and getting that stage win, and repaying all the work of the team. Because the team, not just the riders in this race, but this team, since they've signed this guy, they're paying him a fat wad of cash every month. But at the same time, they've prepped his whole season around being really good for this race. There's a lot of staff, there's a lot of time and money that goes into that. So for him to stick it out and not just throw in the towel after the first week when he's not looking like he's going to have the GC that he hoped for, and to keep going and then repay the team with this stage win, I think shows a lot about him in terms of being prepared to get through it. And really good to see. And I hope the team is very happy for him as well after doing that.
Totally. We're going to have to get Caitlin on as our producer, because she's stealing all my talking points here. So she's put in the comments that in a weird way, Pog's dominance is making the race better in the lower ranks. And I would agree with that, but am wondering whether this is the first time that I have ever tried any punditry on the Tour de France. Normally I am a very casual cycling observer. Like, I'm passionate about it, but I'm certainly not sitting there trying to work out the equations about if so-and-so takes so much time, then they might make it into the top 10. Like, at the end of the day, most people don't really care about the top 10. I wonder whether that is actually cutting through, or whether it is just the fact that we are paying more attention. Is the fact that Pog has been sewing this race up since the first week, has that meant that we're looking for other narratives, and that's opened up this race in other ways?
Yeah, but at the same time, I was thinking that, to what I, unfortunately for myself, sat down and watched most of this stage when it wasn't as exciting as I was hoping for. I was thinking this would be the one that you remember in 5 years. Where were you when this happened? But it wasn't quite that stage. But I was thinking you need a cheat sheet in front of you to watch the race at this point of the tour, because you see these attacks and then a random team jumping on the front and chasing, and then other attacks where people are quite happy to let them go. And you have to understand all these backstories, where people are in various GC placings, the com standings, the sprint placings, to understand what's going in the race at this point. And that's that's what we love about the Tour de France, I guess, is it gets to this point and there are so many races within the race that if you haven't been keeping up to it, you have no idea what's going on. And then I think that's part of why I see so many just stupid comments online of people saying, oh, this rider was absolutely stupid for doing that. And if you would be forgiven for making those kind of comments if you didn't understand the situation in the race at that point, and why certain riders need to be defending certain spots and why others don't care. So it is good that we have that at the moment. And I was also thinking just then, it is bloody good. We should all be thankful for Ben O'Connor, because it was just nice to see someone else win a stage rather than UAE or Visma Lease Bike. Not that Visma Lease Bike have won too many, but we haven't seen that much of a spread of stage winners. Also, noticeably, the first stage winner from outside of Europe to win a stage at this year's Tour de France, which Domestique did put up an article about that yesterday, which I had to double check because I thought this can't be right. But until yesterday, we didn't have any non-Europeans in the top 10 or having won a stage. Good to see that. I don't think we have to worry about cycling as a global sport, because you only have to look back at the Giro to see a Mexican and an Ecuadorian fighting it out on the podium. Not that they ended up winning in the end, but we're seeing a lot of countries outside of Europe doing quite well. But just this Tour de France, I think, just an anomaly that we have not seen anyone outside of Europe doing particularly well and taking home a stage win.
Totally. So do you have any other talking points before we get on to our next things? Anything else you noticed that people might not have picked up on?
For me, just the sticky bottle with Martinez, which is going viral at the moment. Yeah, not a good look at all. Also, just we haven't seen the communique yet. That'll be coming out in the next few minutes. We'll see what the result is, but should be a fine. And for my idea from my point of view, a removal of those KOM points, because it just did not look like he was going to hold on to that group without the sticky bottle. And it wasn't, for those that haven't watched, just go and have a look. It's not just one sticky bottle. There's quite a few. It's not that he needed the bottles. It was purely just to get back onto the bunch. And this kind of stuff happens so often throughout stages of any race. It was happening all the time in Qinghai Lake. Half of the group header wouldn't have made it in time cut each day without sticky bottles. But when it really influences the race like this, and when it is having such an effect that it means that someone that wouldn't have picked up any KOM points is now a genuine chance to take the KOM jersey. And like I am a big fan of how Lenny Martinez has gone about it since having a shocking start to the tour, coming back, really fighting for these KOM points every day. But yeah, that's just blatant cheating, in my opinion, to grab the bottle for that long to come back to the group.
Yeah, I didn't see it, and I haven't seen anything on social media. I was just having a quick flick through to see if anything did pop up. But yeah, I know there were riders at the Tour of Qinghai Lake that were quite frustrated about the fact that there were some questionable tactics going on some of those climbs. And at the end of the day, it is frustrating when some people are trying to play the sport the right way and other people are playing the sport the wrong way. And it seems that at certain points, the commissaires do care, and at certain points, they don't. I think what people are just wanting in cycling across the board is just consistency being applied.
Yeah, and it's a tricky one because, in my opinion, you actually, I'm not anti-sticky bottle in all scenarios, because I would 100% say that despite it not being in the rules, you should be able to take a sticky bottle to come back after a crash or a mechanical, because this is not advantaging you in any way. You've been disadvantaged by something out of your control. Just use that to come back to the bunch and then continue racing. There's no advantage gained, net advantage gained. Whereas when there's no mechanical or crash mishap in this point, and it's just, blatantly cheating to come back to the bunch, then I think just needs to be a fine. Don't throw him out of the race or crucify him or ban him from the sport forever. But decent fine and some KOM points taken off would be a reasonable punishment for me.
That being said, I don't hate it, because I think next in line for the KOM points is Tadej Pogacar, and I don't really want a situation where Tadej Pogacar locks up all of the jerseys, which I think it is still potentially in play that he could do that. And that would, I think that would be a negative story for the Tour de France if Tadej Pogacar walks away with yellow polka dots and the green jersey, much as that would be amazing for him. So with that, we go on to the domestique of the day. Now, I've noticed there are a few people that, it looks like a lot of people are competing for the Lazarus Award. And I'd just, like to also go out there and say, it seems that our podcast getting some cut through with SBS, because they have now started doing the domestique of the day. So, you're welcome. But who did you have for today?
Mine was a joint one. I couldn't separate them. Narvaez and Yates for just UAE's Adam Yates for coming back. I'd probably go Narvaez, even though he didn't last as long. Just the fact that him coming into this tour, he was more set for the supporting Tadej in the punchy stages. He's a good climber. For anyone that's followed him, he's always there and abouts for those 5-10 minute climbs, the Ardennes style racing as well. But for him to still be there at the end of one of the hardest mountain stages, come back to the group and do the pacing, that makes a difference between, it wouldn't have changed the result as much, but that's the difference. Him coming back as often as he has in these mountains, doing the job for as long as he has, is a difference between Tadej having really stressful days where he's isolated and doesn't know when he's going to get attacked and when they're going to launch. It looks like he'd be able to follow regardless, but Narvaez is basically just relieving Tadej's stress by just being there for as long as he has, and he's really stepped up since we've lost Almeida from the tour.
Yeah, totally. Mine is Frank Vandenbroek from Picnic Post NL. He pulled Onley in that valley to basically bring him back on, and I think if it wasn't for Vandenbroek Onley wouldn't have been in contention for today's stage in the way that he was. So yeah, my one goes to him. He put in a real diesel engine.
He was also ripping the very first breakaway of the day on the front as well when DSM had some numbers in that. So he had a massive day and just clearly was on a good one and happy to help his teammates. So yeah, well and truly worthy. Did you have a dickhead of the day?
Mine would have to go to Jorgensen for that attack and then just completely fading away. Now you can justify it in any way you want, but I think that's worthy of being the dickhead of the day. But it's good to see that today, just watching the fans on the sidelines, it seems like a pretty good day to be a cyclist in that regards. There didn't seem to be people showing their ass cracks to riders
it looked pretty messy on the final climb. I was nearly going to give the fans the Domestique of the day just because it started hailing and there was still people all over the side of the mountain there. And yeah, like we've ripped on the fans a lot throughout this podcast, and rightly so for the ones getting on the road, disrupting the race. But those actual hardcore fans that are there to watch the race and are just going up there from 9 a.m. in the morning to get up there before the road closures and then hanging out there for hours on end to see their favourite rider pass for about 3 seconds. They definitely deserve a shout out as well. But for me, the dickhead of the day, and we already touched on it, so we don't have to go over it too much. But I can't pick either of the Red Bull riders because I don't know what's going on there. But just I got to give it to their DS for it's again so easy to say in hindsight. Like at the time, it looks like Lipowitz is riding away from that group and going to take time on Pogacar and Jonas. But yeah, when you look back at it, just to not make that call that they actually work together as a team and one work for the other. And when they don't have the best riders in the race, they're close enough yet not helping each other out that much. I think it's cost them today, and they're going to get that prize today.
They were 100% my second choice. So yeah, good call there. So we've got a couple of questions actually that sort of come through towards the end. So number one is first time watching the Tour de France while in Australia. How do you do it? I'm exhausted. So I might take this one. I go to bed at 8 o'clock. I say goodnight to my wife. I go to bed and then I wake up at 11 and try and watch as much as I can. And I am a zombie. I had last session off school today and I was sitting at my desk. I had great intentions of being productive and I was, really, really struggling. So it's tough. But I keep telling myself there's only, 3 more sleeps and then it's done. And it's also been one of the most enjoyable watching experiences of the Tour de France doing this. How are you going over in France?
I'm doing it a lot easier than even when I was in China for the first week. But Missy, I am just lucky that I'm not training too much because usually I'm still training in the afternoons when it's on, but it is very nice and chill for me. But I do have fond memories of when I was a school kid, even always watching this in July. Obviously, most of it falls in the school holidays, which is very handy. But during the school nights, I would go to bed and get dad to wake me up if it was exciting, which was really useful on nights like tonight. I just would have woke up in the morning and say, hey, why didn't you wake me up? And he would have said it just didn't get exciting. So it was very handy there, but I have fond memories of waking up in the middle of the night to watch the key stages. And yeah, you as a kid, you don't actually need that much sleep. Well, you don't notice when you're sleep deprived. You just get angry and cry all the time. But as an adult, very, very hard on the body to not sleep for that long. But if you're a hardcore cycling fan, you just have to put up with it, I think.
Yep. And that's it, man. I think everyone understands. Like my head teacher at work is a mad sports fan. So if he's not up at night watching the cycling, he's up at night watching the golf or the cricket. So we're like-minded there. So he understands. But yeah, just trying to survive at the moment. Sunk cost fallacy is why do mountaintops finishers award sprint points? My understanding, I think the concept of it being a sprint point is the misnomer here. It is the points classification. It was put in so there was more enticement for sprinters to stay into the race, is my understanding of the reason why they ended up creating that classification.
It was originally just created way back in the day. If you watch the Tour de France documentaries, for just one of the sponsors, and I can't remember the name of the sponsor. We're going to have to fact check that, but green. It was a green sponsor. That's why the jersey is green. Also, the newspaper that sponsored the race to start with was gold, yellow. The flyer that they put out, I don't think it was a newspaper. But yeah, it was just a sponsor that was green, wanted a jersey in the race. So they have this points classification, which is, as it says, it's just the general classification by points. So it's been nicknamed the Sprinters jersey because sprinters won it so many years, because historically sprinters would pick up better stage placings throughout the tour than climbers, because climbers had fewer opportunities. The issue that we have now is that the best climber in the race also can sprint and do really well on these punchy stages, which is not something that we've seen that much of in the past. So it's been really tricky now to balance those points so that it is not the same rider winning all three jerseys.
La Belle Jardinière, a French clothing store chain, was the original green jersey sponsor. So yeah, it's just, we're seeing more well-rounded GC riders. I remember when I first started watching it was the Cadel, Andy Schleck era, and Cadel always had Schleck on the time trials, but Schleck always had Cadel in the mountains. And now what you're seeing is GC riders that can time trial exceptionally. You know, they're often up there winning the time trials, but they're also winning mountain stages, and they're also finishing relatively high in some of those more selective sprint stages. So yeah, it just becomes a situation where there is the possibility, only really with someone like Tadej Pogacar. I don't think if Tadej Pogacar wasn't in the race, there wouldn't be a situation where a GC hopeful was looking at that jersey.
Yeah, well, Chris Froome a few years ago actually had a chance at it. I think that was just more the nature of the course. We had barely any sprint stages. And I don't think we're going to see a resurgence of flat sprint stages, because the race needs to stay entertaining. And I loved having that first week, definitely, where we didn't have too many flat sprint stages and a good mix of everything. So I don't think it'll revert back to it. Maybe we just need to wait until we get pure climbers again, if that ever happens.
Yeah. We've got Justin's 001. Is there a better low-key TDF podcast? I don't think so. And then Marshall Grint, can Poggy just send it, stop defending and attack? Want to see how quick he can do some of these climbs. It's funny because there are two camps there, and there are some people that just don't want to see Poggy attack because they immediately accuse him of doping. And then there are the other people that just want to see how hard he can go.
For me, I was happy to not see him attack from the bottom of Coldwallows today, even if he could have, because it gave Breakaway a chance to win. And I honestly think at this point, there's a bit of, like, from his perspective, he is genuinely good bloke. I don't think he is too greedy in terms of, if there is the opportunity to win a stage, he will take it. But at the same time, he's not going to put his team on the front and rip the climbs to bring back a breakaway. The fact that the breakaway, the original breakaway, got caught so early today was Visma Lisa Bike trying to put pressure on him. So it's not Pogacar at this point, the one that's ripping it. And I think for him, out of going for Strava comms or keeping the rest of the peloton somewhat on board with him, then I think he'd probably just be the nice bloke in this instance and take the Strava comms on a training camp instead.
I do really want to hear that now the attacker Pogacar thing about halfway up one of these climbs, but it's just not, the race situation doesn't need it either. He's just going to follow Vingegaard and snag the bonus points at the top. And he's doing that every single time. So, yeah. And then the last one is from Marshall Grint, which is, can they make, I think what he's asking for is the equivalent of the Spring Classics, but with these mountains. So like a series of one-day mountains races. And I'd be all about it.
Yeah, we have some. I've thought about the same thing. We have some one-day mountain races, but it's pretty few and far between. There's the Mercantor Classic, there's the Drome Classic. They're all down south of France earlier in the year, and no one watches them. They're similar time to the start of the Cobble Classics, and there's just no one pays any attention to it. Not no one, the people around here and some climbing fanatics do, but if you look compared to the Cobble Classics, and then there's a Ventoux Classic each year where they just race up Ventoux. I think the main reason is they're actually just not as exciting because the best rider wins too often. The beauty in the classics, and it's changed a little bit the last few years because we've had Van der Poel winning so many races, but there's so many tactics come into play. There's so much chaos. There's so much variance in the result each time. That's what makes them more exciting. If you just chucked, riders on these stages like today and just made them classics, the best rider would win. And if we look at the classic that does have the most climbing, Lombardia is everyone's fifth favorite classic for this reason, because usually whichever climber rocks up that's in the best form just wins, and it's not that exciting.
Yeah, I think these climbing, they whittle away the peloton on successive climbs in a Grand Tour. And so we look at the climbs as the most romantic elements of the Grand Tour. But I think we will walk away from this Grand Tour thinking that it was the first week where it was classic style racing that was the most exciting part of this tour. And at the end of the day, if you do have something like this, why would people want to go? What are teams going to get out of it? Because like you said, if Poggy shows up to one of these, he wins. And if he doesn't show up and Vingegaard shows up, he wins. It's just climbing is so selective. There's not the ability to sort of sit on a wheel, surf, pick the right line and manage to snag the sprint victory at the end. Breakaways will be controlled. It is an awesome idea in concept. It's just, climbs really sort the men out from the boys, and that would just...
It just, we touched on a few times, just less tactics and more who can go from bottom to top the fastest. So generally not as exciting.
Totally. So with that, let's just do a quick, what is tomorrow? So I've got the profile up here. If you...
I've got it up.
I can do it because I did yesterday.
So we've got 130K, much shorter than today, but a hell of a lot of climbing again. So 4,600 meters climbing in just 130K from Albertville to La Plagne, which is a little bit lower than today's finish at 2,000 meters. Still going to hurt the legs, and the final climb is 19.3K of 7.2%. But really similar to yesterday, profile-wise, just some big, long climbs. And I think we're going to see the race play out in a similar fashion. The big thing will be whether Visma Lisa Bike just come out with their tail in between their legs and basically concede defeat and not try to shake up the GC. And it's hard to know, because after trying so many times and not getting anywhere with it, it's really tough to keep doing that again. I think they have to, just on the off chance that Pogacar is having a bad day, but I think it'll be similar in that if they try and it doesn't work, then there is the chance for a breakaway to stay away and fight for the win. Trying to pick riders at this point is really tricky, because it's who's got legs and who might get into that breakaway and give themselves a chance. For me,
Ben today, hey, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so hard to pick at this point, and this is why it is very hard to bet on cycling, because when a breakaway wins, it is so hard to pick a rider. But for me to pull someone out of a hat, he has already won a stage, and he looked pretty good again today. Thymen Arensman, I am picking for tomorrow from a breakaway.
I think Visma is going to put satellite riders in like they did previously, and I think they're going to go into this with split ambitions. I think they would be happy to take a stage win away at this point. So I think they'll put someone like Simon Yates in, who looked pretty good today. And I think they'll have him as a satellite rider. But if the situation is looking like the rest of the guys are unable to crack, I think they'll give him the opportunity to go. I think that will be the situation, because I don't see Poggy cracking at this point. And my tip is that Simon Yates will win tomorrow's stage.
Yeah, I think that is a very likely scenario, and we could see Sepp Kuss win the same way as well. They'll be looking to do something like that, and we'll definitely see an attack from Wout van Aert again, because he seems to love attacking at the start of these stages, and it's good to see him getting amongst it despite not being there as long as he has been in previous years. Good to see him still having a crack at the start of every stage.
100%. And Sepp Kuss did actually look really good today. So, yep. Will be interesting. And Felix Gall is someone who's also been having a crack, and I'd love to see him have a go. So, potentially Gall as well. With all of that, one thing that I did want to touch on very quickly before we go, and maybe we'll have more time for this tomorrow. Women's Tour de France kicks off. We won't be doing the daily pod for that, just simply because even if they asked me to, I would say two things. One, get some females to do it, and two, I don't have the I can't stay awake. So but I think tomorrow we should do a quick run through of the stages to go through it. But yeah, just make sure that you are staying tuned for that. It is really cool. And if you're in Australia, SBS has a really good documentary that I'm going to be watching when I get some free time about the history of the first women's Tour de France races. So get on that too.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see. It'll be good to start off a race without massive time gaps, which we have now currently, and anything can happen. So that will be an exciting one to watch for sure.
Yeah. All right. And with that, I'm going to go to bed, and Cyrus is going to go and do whatever it is you do in Nice, probably something really nice.
I'm going to the gym now because I was sitting on the couch all day watching this race when I could have been pumping iron instead. But
nice.
Got to get some lifts in.
Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy that. And yeah, I'm going to go to sleep.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Appreciate you all.